It was actually an account of a superstition, a belief that the people had, and not him authorizing this as an actual fact. You need to understand that, because God does not in any way, shape, or form, and in any way, does he ever say that superstition is something that is acceptable to him. You see, these people thought that if I'm next to this, when the water starts to move, I'm going to get healed. Fact is, it was a natural fed spring that would enter into this pool, and as the water would enter in, it would cause the pool to bubble up, and people not realizing it was an artesian spring would actually think an angel was there, and it was a superstitious belief. So here we are in the 21st century. And people are saying how superstitious people can be over 2,000 years ago. And yet we at the same time say, well, people are superstitious even to this day. And we know that to be true, of course. There are people who believe in all kinds of things. They'll go to their clergyman and they'll say, can you pray for this particular cross that I'm wearing so that it will be blessed by you and I can be safeguarded? Some people will run around and they will have what are called scapulars. You can have a brown scapular, you can have a green scapular. There are a variety of colors that you carry. It's a strip of cloth and it has a promise on it. And the bearer of this particular scapular is going to be preserved from any injuries and all. And they will wear those things. And I've known people who wore them or carry them in their wallet or in a purse and all of that. And they believe that they've been blessed, and that's going to keep them from being injured in any way, shape, or form. Some people will do the most amazing things. Some people will send money to television evangelists because the evangelist said to them, if you send me your money, I will send you some holy water that's been blessed that you can pour on yourself and it'll help you to be healed. Or I'll send you an anointed prayer cloth, and you send me your money, I'll send you the cloth. You put the cloth on any part of your body that you're not feeling well, and the anointing will flow from my hand to this cloth to your body. And people will send money to do that. Or they'll send money for the seeds. They'll say, I'm sending you a watermelon seed. And even as a watermelon has many seeds, your seed faith offering is going to produce many-fold return to you if you send your money to this ministry. I remember a minister that was saying, send me some of your money and I'll send you an autographed picture of Jesus. And people actually sent this guy money. And so there's this superstition. I've been in Israel many times, and you'll go by the Jordan River, and there's a place that we have baptisms and all. And right there in the same location, there's a little shop that will sell you anointed oil from the Holy Land, olive oil. And all of these pilgrims are buying this anointed oil. Or you can buy a little small vial of water from the Jordan, and it has a little necklace, and people will wear that as kind of like a good luck charm, if you will. I've been there by the Jordan River. I can still remember these Italians walking up, and they were drinking their beer, and as they were drinking beer by the Jordan River, they finished their bottle, and they washed the bottle out with the water there in the Jordan and filled it up with holy water from the Jordan. They were going to take it home and put it in their house and splash it on themselves in time of need. I mean, I've seen that. Some of you have seen that, and it's superstition. So John is not authorizing this. He's not saying that this is actually what was taking place. He's saying this is what the people believe. The people believed that coming to this particular place, whenever the water bubbled over, there was an angel there stirring it up, and if you were the first to climb in, you would be healed. And so what we're seeing is him actually saying this is the superstition, but at the same time we're going to be seeing how God actually is manifested. It's going to show us something of the love of God, how that God does meet the need of somebody who is crippled, somebody who has a need to be touched. The psalmist in Psalm 6 verse 2 said, have mercy on me, O Lord, for I am weak. O Lord, heal me, for my bones are troubled. And we're going to see the Lord who has mercy and heals in an event that takes place here at the pool called Bethesda. Now he says in verse 5, a certain man was there who had an infirmity for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, he said to him, do you want to be made well? Now, as we look at this, there's a couple things we can look at. One is, why is it that John tells us that this man had been crippled for 38 years? When you study the Scriptures, especially the Gospels, you'll note that this kind of information like that, 38 years, that's really not revealed. This is kind of a unique thing that you see, that he says this man had been in that condition for 38 years. Now we have to ask ourselves a question as we study the Bible. Why would you insert that number? What's the purpose of looking at the number 38 as it relates to a man who was crippled? And the answer is it more than likely is intended to remind us of unbelieving Israel and the amount of years that unbelieving Israel wandered in the wilderness. Because in the Old Testament, we're told in Deuteronomy in chapter 2, verse 14, that it says this. It says, the time we took to come from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed over the valley of the Zered was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of war was consumed from the midst of the camp, just as the Lord had sworn to them. So this man's paralysis could symbolize the condition of Israel, spiritually paralyzed in need of a touch from God. And so that's probably the reason he would let us know this man has been in this condition for 38 years, to remind us that the nation of Israel, walking in unbelief, spiritually paralyzed, also had 38 years of experience in a particular condition. And so he says this man was there who had this infirmity 38 years. But verse 6 says, when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, he said to him, do you want to be made well? Now this is where I want to try and bring some practical application to this passage for us today. Two things I want to point out. Notice first how John says that Jesus saw him and Jesus knew his condition. Jesus saw him and Jesus knew. In spite of a multitude, Jesus sees this man. In spite of a multitude of people who are gathered there, Jesus sees the need of one person. And so that helps me to understand that even if I'm in the midst of a great crowd of people, that the Lord's attention can still be fastened on me. Even though there may be people around me who have needs, He knows that I have needs also. So that helps me in my walk with the Lord. It helps me to know that God is aware of my condition. And to me, that's a very important thing, because I do not worship a God who does not have a concern for the individual. I don't worship a God who is simply an energy, a force, or some kind of power. I don't worship a God who, like the deists in the early history of the United States believed, started everything in motion, and then that God just took himself out of the picture and let it just go on its own. I have a God who's involved in my life, a God who takes a personal interest in me. Now the psalmist tells us in Psalm 139, verses 14 through 16, as he's speaking to the Lord, he says, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written. The days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. When the baby is in the womb, those who would say that's only potential life, God would differ with that and say that is life. And I am aware of that one even in the womb. And the days are fashioned. I'm aware of where I want to take them and what I want to do with them. And so from the time you were in your mother's womb, without even a conception of who you are as a person, as a life, God's already aware of you. God's aware of you from the very beginning. And so even in a crowd, Jesus sees you, and He's aware of your particular need, because He's aware of everything about you. Even in the same psalm, the psalmist says, you know my down sitting, and you know my uprising. You know when I sit down, when I stand up. You know my thoughts from afar. You know the words that will come off of my tongue even before they're formed and spoken. You know everything about me. And so one of the things I get from this passage is that Jesus, as He's in this multitude, sees one person and one person's need, and He knows that man's condition, how he's been in need for 38 years. But there's a second thing I want to bring to you, and that to me is very practical. How He says to this man in verse 6 here in chapter 5 of John, He says to him, do you want to be made well? Now that is an incredibly important question.